Under GST, the receiver cannot take the input tax credit unless the supplier didn't show the sale in respect of those input into his GSTR1. So we can say that under the GST there is a concept of matching the sales with the purchase or the purchase with the sale, so that the input tax credit cannot be falsely taken by the recipient. So and also there is one more fact, that if there will be mismatching between the sale and purchase, then the input tax credit regarding those will be added to the output tax liability of the recipient, and it will be shown into the return GSTR2 of the recipient. So if you want to know about it, that how it's gonna process in the GST, then stay tuned with this video. Hey guys, what's going on? So again come up with a new video, and this time we will discuss about the mismatching of details of sale and purchase or the credit note under GST and how to show it into the return. So in this video we will discuss about it. So the two section or the provision which deals with the mismatching of the sales purchase as well as the credit note, and regarding the detail of credit note which is to be shown by the recipient. So section number 42 and 43 of the CGST Act deals with the mismatching. Then section 42 is from the point of view of the recipient, and section 43 is the point of view of the supplier. So section 42 will be triggered when the detail of input tax credit which the recipient has taken into his electronic credit ledger will not be matched with the sales figure into the GSTR1 return of the supplier. So suppose you are a recipient and you take the input tax credit regarding the input which you received into your place of business, but the supplier hasn't reflected those sales into his GSTR1, then mismatching will happen. And there will also be mismatching happen when suppose you are a recipient and you take the extra input tax credit, excess input tax credit into your GSTR2, and mismatching can also be happen when you take the twice duplicate input tax credit regarding the same invoice. It can also be happen into section number 43. Section number 42. Then section number 43 is regarding from the point of view of supplier, where the supplier is issuing the credit note and therefore reducing his output tax liability from the return, reducing the output tax liability because he issued the credit note, but the credit note is not reflecting into the GSTR2 of the recipient. So therefore it can be happen that because the recipient isn't shown the credit note received into their place of business, then we will discuss how it gonna process in section number 43. So section 42 and 43 is regarding those cases. So now first, if the detail of input tax credit, the detail of purchases will not be matched with the detail of sales of the supplier, then there will be discrepancy. There will be discrepancy between the recipient and as well as the supplier. So that discrepancy will be communicated to both supplier as well as the recipient in the method, in the prescribed method. I don't know about how the method will be prescribed, but that will be communicated to both the recipient as well as the supplier in the prescribed method. So we will see it in the future that how it's gonna do it. And then in the section number 43, when suppose the supplier is showing it into, like he issued the credit note and the recipient is not reflecting into his GSTR2 the same credit note, then the mismatching will be happen and the same will be communicated to both the recipient as well as supplier into the prescribed method. And if in the section number 42 the supplier does not reflect the same thing into his GSTR1, then it will be added to the output liability of the recipient. Output liability of the recipient in the table number 12A of the GSTR2. Table number 12A of the GSTR2, when the supplier isn't shown the same sales figure into his GSTR1. And in this case, when the recipient is not showing the same credit note into his GSTR2, then the output tax liability will be increased by so much of amount which he has already deducted from his output tax liability when he issued the credit note, and that will be reflected into table number 12B of GSTR2 of the supplier. Remember that. That's how it's gonna process. Table number 12A and 12B is for the increasing the output tax credit, output tax liability when in case of this the supplier is not showing the sale in respect of those there is a mismatching, and in this case when the recipient is not showing the credit note into his GSTR2, then remember that how it's gonna process. So but suppose if that communication will be happen, like in this cases the communication will be done to both the recipient as well as supplier, so that amount will be added into the output tax liability in the month succeeding the month in which the communication will happen to the recipient. And in those cases, in this case when the communication will happen, then the output tax liability will be increased of the supplier when in the month succeeding the month in which the communication will be given to both supplier as well as recipient. But suppose after the communication, in this case the supplier is has shown now the detail of invoices into his GSTR1, then those amount which has been added earlier will be deducted from the output tax liability of the recipient into table number 12C of the GSTR2. And in this case when the recipient is showing the credit note into his GSTR2, then it will be reduced from the output tax liability, and that will be reflected in table number 12D of the GSTR1. So remember that how it's gonna process. First it will be added, and then when the supplier will show it into his GSTR1, then it will be reduced in table number 12C. And in these cases when the supplier is showing the credit note but the recipient is not showing into his GSTR2, then it will be added into 12B of the GSTR2. But when the recipient will show it into his GSTR2, then it will be again reduced from the output tax liability in table number 12D of the GSTR2 of the supplier in this case, and in this case the recipient. And in case where the output tax liability is increased in table number 12A or output tax liability in table number 12B, then in both cases the interest will be also payable by the recipient as well as the supplier from the date, in this case where he's taken the input tax credit, till the date the amount will be added to the table number 12A of the GSTR2 of the recipient. And in these cases the interest will be payable by the supplier from the date when he has reduced his output tax liability when he issued the credit note, till the date the amount is added under table number 12B of the GSTR2. So that's how it's gonna process. You have to also pay the interest in case the amount will be added. But suppose in these cases when the supplier will show it into his GSTR1, and in this case when the recipient will show it into his GSTR2, then the amount of interest will be refunded to you guys. So remember that if everyone is okay, then the interest first you have to pay, and then it will be refunded to you into your electronic cash ledger. So that's how it's gonna process. That's how the complete process it is. But suppose in these cases where you are showing something, where you are showing that yes you received something into your place of business, but the supplier is not showing into his GSTR1. So that's how when we can say that whether one person is correct or other person is correct. So who is exactly correct? So suppose you are showing it into your GSTR2, something like you purchase something, but the supplier is not showing it. So suppose you are okay, but because you are honest person, so the amount will be added like you are okay, then if you are okay, then you don't need to worry anything about it. Then the supplier has to pay interest as well as penalty also, because he is concealing something, and you can easily take the input tax credit when the demand will be raised to supplier. And in this case when you are issuing the credit note and you are reducing your output tax credit, output tax liability, but the recipient is not showing that in that credit note, so it means that there is a fault in the hand of the recipient. So demand will be added, demand will be given to the recipient in this case, and you can easily take or reduce the output tax liability in these cases. So that's how it's gonna process. But suppose if you are a dishonest person and you in this case showing something which there is nothing, anything like that invoice doesn't exist, but you are showing something into your GSTR2. So in this case, because you are dishonest, so demand will be given to you, and you have to pay penalty in respect of those input tax credit which you have falsely taken. And in these cases where you are showing the credit note and it is in actual doesn't exist, so you have to also pay the penalty. So that's how it's gonna process. But if suppose both person are wrong, supplier as well as the recipient is both are fraudulent person, so mismatching will not happen, because the supplier is showing it into GSTR 1, the recipient is showing it into GSTR 2, so therefore there is nothing wrong, there is no one who is wrong in this, so the mismatching will not happen. But suppose in the future date when the department will catch you red-handed, then both will have to pay interest as well as the penalty. So therefore these cases will not be covering the mismatching because both are showing it into GSTR 1 and 2. But remember that you can be caught in the later when the department will catch you. Or suppose you are not showing, the supplier is not showing into his GSTR 1 or the recipient is also not showing into GSTR 2. That's how in those cases also mismatching cannot be happen. So but when the department will catch you, then you have to pay both interest as well as penalty. So that's how it's gonna process. Mismatching will only happen when the one party is showing something but the one party is not showing something, or like the supplier showing something, the recipient is not showing something. Like you are saying that you have received your goods into factory, but the supplier is saying no, that is not the case. But when suppose you are supplying, you are issuing the credit note, but the recipient is not showing into his GST. So that's how it's gonna process. This is the whole process of section number 42 and 43. So table number 12A, 12B, 12C, 12D is regarding those cases. And one more important fact, table like in those cases where the mismatching will happen, then those amount will not be added or will not be reduced from your input tax credit. Remember that reversal of input tax credit is different thing from the adding into your output tax liability. Remember that table number 11 is for reversal of input tax credit, but that is very different from table number 12. So table number 11 is regarding the reversal of input tax credit, and there are 4-5 cases like when the recipient is not making the payment to the supplier, or when the recipient is using the input for different purpose, like for non-business purpose as also for the exempted purpose. So that's how there is a set formula in rule number 42 where they say you have to calculate something and that increase your output and then reverse the input tax credit regarding those which are exempted. So that is table number 11 is very different. Table number 12 is very different. 12 is saying to increase the output tax liability, but table number 11 is saying to reverse the input tax credit. So remember that mismatching cases will be only reflected into table number 12, not the table number 11. Table number 12A, 12B is regarding the mismatching and increasing your output tax liability when the mismatching will happen. Table number 12C, 12D is regarding the reversal of what the mistake has happened. So like when the other party will show it, then the output tax liability again will be reduced. So that's how it's gonna process. That is the complete chain of the mismatching. So if you have the query, then comment on the comment section. I will make another video, separate video for answer to your queries. In the next video, we will also discuss in the next means something different topic we will discuss in the next video. Till then, you have to wait for my next video. We will again meet in the next video. We will again meet in the next video. Till then, bye bye.